Welcome back to the Focus to Win podcast. I'm Austin Chavis, along with my co-host, Lee Tessier. And we are back at it, and we're going to talk about moolah, money, and the dough. So today, this is mainly about to give all of our younger listeners, even people that are a little older, some knowledge on the money side. And Lee, you have obviously a great track record of managing your finances at a high level. And first and foremost, coming from a younger perspective, let's start there. Let's say you have someone coming out of college, you have student debt, they have a couple things under their belt, maybe credit card debt. What would you tell the younger person? How do we handle the finances?
Create a budget.
People
Nobody
hate
wants
that
to hear
word.
like budget. What? I'll tell I lived through my hard times. I learned how to make money. My dad taught me great ways to make money, which was fantastic, but not how to save it. I had to learn. I think of one of the things Jim Rohn always said was live on less than you make.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's hard to
you
do.
think of everybody like, oh, that should be a given, right? Most people don't know what they spend.
That's true.
So they have no idea. They don't even know what they clear majority of the time because after taxes, hey, I make $100,000 a year. Great. What do you take home? What is it that you're netting? Because you live off of $100,000. That's a little like $9,000 a month, roughly. 9 times 12, 108. So a little less than $9,000 a month. And then people have $7,000 in bills. By the time you take the taxes out off of $8,700 or so, you're going to be down in the $6,700. Mm-hmm. So now you're in the hole every month.
Yep.
So a lot of people don't factor in what is it that your take-home pay is, so you know what that is, and then what is your total monthly expense. So get a budget. Dave Ramsey was great for that. You can go to his Financial Freedom. You can go to just daveramsey.com. I think he has a basic budget on there. So factor in food, groceries, gas, insurances, health insurance, car insurance, all the things that you have to pay bills on, like Comcast or Verizon, whatever your home internet. Because I'll never forget, we built our house. I'm like, I can probably get rid of internet. I don't know what the hell I was thinking then, but I was like, we were trying to figure out on where we could save because we were going from a townhouse to a single family house. But we didn't create a budget then. I just kind of started writing down what I was spending, and then all of a sudden you look at things, you're like, holy crap, there's more month than there's money, right? So At the end of the month, there's a lot more of it that you have bills coming in, and all of a sudden there's not enough money. So you really got to factor that in. What do you need to cut out? And a lot of people don't look at that until it's too late. Mm-hmm. And then they can't just go say, oh, I'm going to go make more money. Well, now that somebody's working a second job, or they're going to have to stay longer or work harder on commissions and stuff of that sort. So what is it that you're doing? But you really need to evaluate what is it that you're spending on a monthly basis, and then factor in for Murphy, because Murphy's Law always kind of like something happens, car breaks down, you get a flat tire, dead battery, and, kids need whatever for school, lunches, just it all adds up that you don't think about it.
Yeah, and from I've always heard budgeting growing up, and I looked at it as a bad thing, but I think as you get older and you start to make money, you realize how important that is.
Well,
and,
security.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. So let's say, a person is entry level. They've just left college. Let's say they make $60,000 a year for their first year. From a percentage standpoint, what would you recommend? Do they invest most of their money? Do they put it in savings?
They should be saving right out of the gate. So just saving, all right.
And how much?
Well, it depends on what their expenses are. So are they living at home? One, do they have a mortgage? Do they have rent? What is it that they're paying for shelter? Because I think shelter is one of the most expensive things. And then car, because they need to get around, transportation. And then you're going to have food, because even if you live with parents, you should have to pay some kind of food, or you're going out with your friends and you're going to restaurants or whatever, and that adds up a whole hell of a lot more, depending if you're going to restaurants, going out at night, having alcohol, like all those things when you're in your 20s and 30s. That's a considerable amount of money that people don't think about, because swiping a card or tapping a card, you don't feel the pain as if you're paying cash, because a lot of people don't even carry cash now.
It's true. I'm guilty.
It's more painful to pull money out and spend it, and you're watching it and you're like, versus tapping it or whatever, swipe.
Interesting. Yeah. So it seems as if only want to write what your expenses are, but categorize it. So if you're going to do, and I know Dave Ramsey briefly mentioned that when I went through the class, and Lee, thank you for giving me that,
Yeah.
because that did teach me a lot of things. He talked about a zeroing out budget, which basically means you have your percentages, you know, the paycheck is, and you have a percentage to represent whatever that paycheck is for, you know, your living expenses, whether it be your housing, your utilities, your groceries, and you categorize those things until eventually the money zeroes out because you have it already scheduled what your fund money is. I remember when I first started in real estate, because the money is so sporadic, that you have to learn to literally take it and even be more secure with it, just because you just don't know what's going to happen the next month.
The biggest expense with real estate people don't think about is taxes.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they have the tax man chasing them. And they're like, holy shit, I got to get caught up.
Right.
You know, like they can take it from your bank account.
Yep.
So make sure you put money aside. So I always tell everybody put at least 30, depending on if you're doing well, you should put 40% away of that right away. Put it into a separate savings account that you don't, like, you go to a different bank or be able to transfer that you're not, it's more complicated to get to. The more complicated and harder it is to get to, the less likely you're going to take from it.
Right. Right.
So that would be one of it. You had asked percentages. It's tough until you know what you're working with.
Right.
So most people are going to look at, say if they made, let's say 40 grand, because I think of the compound effect, he talks about his assistant in there. So really good book, Compound Effect, Darren Hardy. He talks about his assistant saying, that's great. You talk about saving 10%, blah, blah, blah. She's like, I don't have any money at the end of the month. And he's like, well, let's look at what you're spending money. So she puts all her big stuff down, but then she doesn't put, hey, she goes to Starbucks every morning for coffee. She goes to the deli every day for lunch, like do pods or whatever. You can get coffee at the office or whatever it may be. It's not as fancy or whatever. That probably saves you, say if it saves you $3 a day, 5 days a week, that's $15. 4 times a month, that's what?
That's a lot.
That's $60.
Yeah.
60 times 12 months, that's $720.
Right.
It's more than that. I think the statistic is 72% of people do not have $5,000 or more in savings.
Wow. That's
72.
crazy.
So it's 72 or 77. It's a very, very high number.
So most people are month to month,
right,
essentially.
Paycheck to paycheck.
So from a savings perspective, for the entry level person, is there an amount of months that you would save from living expenses? Let's say you have your living expenses written down. Is there a timeline that you should say, all right, save this amount before you do anything next? Because I know Dave Ramsey hits on it a little bit.
He hits on first. Emergency fund's $1,000. So save $1,000 right out of the way, because that way, if you get a flat tire, dead battery, whatever happens, you have a little bit of a cushion. $1,000 isn't going to save everything, but it'll take care of the, oh my God, this just happened. You don't put it on a credit card and then, I'm going to pay it off, and never gets paid off. And then all of a sudden, you know, the credit card debt with 25% interest or whatever it may be is substantially high. So if you start with that 1,000, and then it should be 3 to 6 months of reserves. So say if your total like if you're younger, your total expenses may be $3,000 a month. So ideally, if you save 6 months, that's $18,000 in savings. Not that you're putting in a separate investment and doing all these things with, but you could get to it if needed.
Right. So liquid, have it liquid and ready to go. Okay. So now let's talk from a more advanced, let's say, you know, you're entering your mid to later 20s, approaching 30s, and maybe you're making 6 figures. What is now, you have your 6 months saved up. What's that next step? So now you have a lot of savings, you have some security, not enough. What do you do next?
Back to live on less than you make. If you keep living on, like say you were making, you know, say 40,000 a year, and now you're making 100,000 a year. That's 60 grand. Now you're netting, say you're netting 40,000 out of the 60,000. So you have $40,000 more. If you've totally lived on that less money, right? Now you got $40,000 that you could save.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
If you live on, that's how I grew my wealth over the years. It was like I was making more, but I still stayed like, hey, I have this much, and you may expand a little bit, like a little bit more, but you're not going off the rails. Stay to a budget.
So in terms of your primary residence, so you let's say buying your first house, you know, we obviously deal with this day to day, and you've had a ton of experience on this. What is a good percentage that when someone buys their first home, that they could say, okay, where am I maximizing? Because you can be approved for a certain amount, as we both know, but that doesn't mean you should be blowing that especially from the monthly bill perspective.
Yeah, when I looked at it, even with Josh, so when, you know, as my son as a kid, or he's 20, whatever. I think he was like 24-ish, somewhere in that range, and wanted to buy his first home. I had made him save for years. He was still living at home. Like, all right, make sure you have 40 grand put away or whatever. So now he's to the point where he wants to buy a house. He's got some dings on his credit because of like history, whatever. And he wants to go buy. So we get a loan set up that he's able to get it on his own, but he has a little bit higher interest rate because of credit score. So he goes in, gets the loan. He's buying, a $175,000 home or so. He puts down, I think he got away with 10% at the time. FHA, you can get away with 3.5%.
Right.
There's grants. Brendan was talking about stories. He had two people that got in with $250.
Wow.
Out of pocket, depending. So the more you save, the better off you are. You're going to get better
Right.
rates, terms, stuff of that sort. But so Josh's story would be he put down roughly, I think, 25 grand plus closing and so forth. And then a year later, now his credit's like good standings. I said, look, refinance it and do a 15-year mortgage because now your payment only went up, $300 to $400 a month. It wasn't huge.
Right. It's not a big difference at all.
Yeah, his payment was like $1,200 now a month. And I said, all right, well, you can afford to pay $200 more a month on top of that. So if you pay $200 more a month, you're knocking off probably close to another third of the time of this mortgage. And you're paying down a lot more principal. It whacks the interest rate totally down.
Mm-hmm.
So now he goes to sell, in 5 years now he's going to buy a bigger house. Like, all right, now the market went up. It was, he sold it in 2020. So, it was, if you would have kept it longer, it would have been even better because I told him, like, keep it as a rental. But on that case, now he walks away with $100,000 or plus in equity in the house.
Right.
So, renters
And that gives you flexibility.
versus people that own a house. If you own a house, and owning means you're doing a mortgage and purchasing, your net worth is 40 times greater than somebody renting.
Wow.
That's
So you would say, so from a renting perspective, I feel as if today's market, it's a lot harder for the entry level buyer.
Correct.
I'm a firm believer that if you can't find a way to subsidize whatever that rent payment is and make it really cheap so you can buy a house as soon as possible, then don't rent at all. I think that's just the strategy you should have. But when you do buy, it seems as if you want to be able to, number one, buy it with as little money as you don't need to put. Everybody thinks you need 100 grand down. Yeah.
As little as you can.
And I think the misconception, us in real estate see it all the time, where people want to put 100 grand down on a house that you really don't need to because
investment.
It's not. Because you could having the reserves,
not cash on cash return,
right? The reserves that you need in case of those rainy days
or
is
opportunities that come up.
correct that you want to have. So it's not worth dumping it all unless you could pay the whole thing in cash. But it seems as if a lot of people are asking, okay, so relative to what I make, what should that mortgage payment be to be comfortable? Because I know Dave Ramsey hits on that a little bit. What do you think?
I would
that
think
ratio?
it's somewhere around 25 to
25%.
30% max. They'll like FHA, you can get pre-qualified up to the 50% range loan to value.
Yeah.
I don't recommend that because then you're cash poor, you're
Right.
house poor because you're paying all this money, like all your income,
Which is very common.
Keep in mind, you're netting 70 cents on the dollar after taxes, and you've qualified yourself that you're paying 50 cents on it. So you only have a 20% buffer for food, all your utility costs, car, it's not enough. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
Unless
So
you
about
have somebody else, you have multiple income, like you have somebody else
Multiple
that's not
streams.
on, that or somebody that's not on the mortgage that's living with you. So it could be a girlfriend, it could be
Roommate.
good friends, roommates. As long as they're offsetting and say you're getting half of that in rent, then that's a good way to be.
Yeah.
Or have two two buddies move in. You got a 3-bedroom house.
Yeah, I think that's the play. For me specifically, it's kind of my strategy going into it to either subsidize with my friends or whoever I'm with at that time. I think that's super important too because you're house hacking, you're leveraging, your assets so that your bill. I mean, a house is really not an asset till it's really paid off.
Right.
And that's what people need to understand. So, all right, so now we got into the house aspect where, you got the entry level person. So let's fast forward and let's talk about the established person. They've had the job for years. Maybe they're trying to retire. So what is the retirement strategy? What's your perspective on that? Whether it be entrepreneur, how do someone
To the house.
Yeah.
So my path was I'm going to pay it off as soon as possible. So I refinanced to a 15-year mortgage, 2012. By 2019, I paid it off. but I was making sure like I had a home equity line because I did a pool, I finished a basement, I did all that back
What's
in
a home
2000.
equity line for people that don't
Yeah,
know?
home equity line of credit is you have like, say I bought the house at 500, now it's worth 800, and say I owe 400 on it with my primary mortgage, and I have up to 800,000. They'll usually loan about 80 to 85% of the appraised value. So say if it's 800 grand, then you're going to loan you 650 roughly. So now you have an equity line of $250,000 that you could do any house, like you go gamble with it if you wanted to, but hopefully you're doing something that's going to add
Put it
value
towards
to the
other
house.
assets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
So
most people though, the issue is that they'll put that money into something that's not a really good investment and they're just adding on
yeah,
debt.
yeah.
So
So I'll
tell them.
say, so what I did was I was paying off that home equity line as fast as I could. So in minimum payment, a lot of them are interest only. So you're just paying interest and you're not moving that. After some point, they make it principal and interest, but then your payment goes up substantially.
Right.
But a lot of people do it. They do the home equity line and they may be having a $500 a month payment or something. And all of a sudden, when it does get to principal and interest, now it's $1,100 or $1,200. Like, oh shit, can you afford to do that? So what I did was just pay extra on that for years. And people want everything today.
Right.
I'm like, it didn't disappear today. I had to pay on it for years. So 3 years later, now that's paid off. Now, say if I was paying a couple $1,000s a month to that, I added that to what I was paying as my primary residence, or primary mortgage. So now I may be paying $5,000 or $6,000. So all of a sudden that's chunking that down by $2,000 extra in principal every month. Then all of a sudden you see it disappearing. And that's rewarding when you see it. Because I said to my wife, I was like, all right, we're at a point now. Do we just pay it off? I was like, would you feel better? She's like, oh my God, I would feel so relieved if it was paid off. I'm like, because 2011, I was worth nothing. Like insolvent, owed more than I was worth. And I'm like,
Red.
yeah, I was like, I never want to be there again. And, when we went through Dave Ramsey, usually I'm in there talking and I'm in tears because I'm like, I don't want you guys to go through what I went through. It was freaking painful. It was hard times. So if you're smarter with your money and live on less than you make, I can't say that enough times, live on less than you make. When I say what you make, not what your gross is, what your after-tax dollars are. Make sure you're contributing to 401ks. So if your company participates in 401k, you can get in, max it out.
Yep.
If it's 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever you can max it out at. So whatever they're going to contribute, if they're going to contribute 3%, contribute 3% at least.
Yeah, so it seems
you're
like
not missing that.
if you're an experienced person now, you have your house and it's your forever home, you plan on being wild, try to minimize that financial plan so that you can pay it off as soon as possible. And I don't really, from what you're saying, it's not a big difference in that payment.
Yeah.
You're gonna say, let's stop going out to eat an extra 2 times, a month.
I mean, look how expensive dinner is.
It's ridiculous now. So it's really small things, and it seems as if when you really break it down and do those small things, like the compound effect,
Right.
that leads to a lot more stabilized future, so that you're not stressing out all
Right.
the time. So another thing that I want to tap on, because you mentioned credit before, how important is credit, and what is one way that whether someone has bad credit or maybe someone who is trying to build credit can develop that and make it put them in a better situation.
So if you're buying a house, talk to a loan officer ahead of time. Do not pay stuff off right away, because some people will say, all right, I have this term loan, whatever it may be. Say it's a 12-month term and they decide they're going to pay it off within 2 months. Well, they actually hurt themselves a lot of cases. I'm not the expert on credit, so I'd say talk to a loan officer or whatever you're trying to get a loan on. Talk to them at the bank. They're going to go through, but a lot of times people think, oh, if I pay it off right away, it's going to help me. Well, it usually hurts you, because now it looks like you paid it off too quick. Are you good pay or not pay? Or not good pay? Right. So that's one of the things. I would look at credit limits. Anytime you can get your credit, like say your credit card, say you can get your limit up higher, and even though you're paying down or paying it off, I would tell you don't have any credit card debt if possible. I was at a point I had $110,000 in credit card debt from investment properties and bad partners, and it was my own fault. I had personal responsibility. I was the one that agreed to it. I was the one that charged it. I lived beyond my means. I was chasing the Joneses and didn't get me where I wanted to get. So, but I would say no credit card debt. I use a credit card now, but I pay it off at the end of every month. I do it for points, because now Capital One pays me 2% back. I'm like, all right, we spent a lot of money around, for business wise. Or I get free Southwest Airlines. I can fly back and forth. My wife gets companion free. Look at the benefits of what you can get, but make sure you pay it off at the end of every month.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Because everybody has their own strategy, right? In terms of the credit side.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, I'm just going to charge it now. I'm going to pay it off. I'm like, and then
Right.
Murphy shows up, and then you don't pay it off, and
Right.
now you have 19 to 24% interest.
Right.
And
Yeah, credit's necessary for anybody
Credit's
who's
super important.
approaching to buy something, or if you want to leverage. And we talked about leverage last episode. Leverage is so important. You need leverage to really scale your net worth, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have basically history proving that you're going to pay the leverage off,
Yeah.
and that is through credit, right? And
Correct.
that's why it's super important. And I think the way you've done it is the best way, because you hear different types of credit hacks. Leave a certain amount, but it's consumer debt. So go into talk about the difference between a consumer debt and leverage debt, which two completely
getting
different
into
things.
another book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, really good
Very
book for
good
people.
book.
Like, because it talks about so many people think of their house as an asset. So if you look at it on a balance sheet, you have assets and liabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Most people's house is a liability because they have a mortgage. You always have taxes. You're going to have insurance that you have to pay. So it costs you money to live there. You have to live somewhere.
Right.
But it's still not, it's an asset in a way, but not really. It's more of a liability. If you use it, say, hey, I'm going to leverage, I'm going to get a home equity line of credit, which I had set up on mine because I was like, opportunity arises and I can get a good deal on something. Doesn't matter if it's a car, or real estate, whatever it is that makes sense. If it's a deal, one man's pleasure is another man's pain, and so forth. So it's like sometimes somebody needs something now and they're willing to take a discount on it, buy it if it makes sense.
Right.
So, opportunities arise, but if you don't have the funds to be able to take advantage of the opportunity, you're not doing any good.
Correct.
So if you set those things up, I've done that with lines of credit for commercial property, like commercial lines of credit for rental properties and so forth too. So once you start building, everybody looks at today, and I'm like, it's not today. I remember buying my first couple investment properties, and I was like, all right, what's it worth today? Well, it's probably worth this tomorrow. Next week, it may be worth this. I'm like, now I'm looking at it and saying, 3 years, 5 years, 20 years. What does this look like? How long do I want to keep it? I want mailbox money on it. I want to pay it off. I was doing 10-year mortgages. When rates were really good, you could do 10-year mortgages.
Yeah.
Now it kind of throws things out of sync that I have to do 15 or 20-year. Otherwise, they don't cash flow or make really good sense to buying and making sure I'm getting equity in them.
I love that.
But it's being smart, and I could have, all that money I was making, I could go buy a fancy car. I could go do all this, and I'm like, it doesn't fill you up. Everybody's like thinking that they're going to get more out of it, and it's filling you up. You get the emotional bang. Oh, I really want to go buy this thing. And then you go buy something, and you're like, how did I just do that?
Right. And I think your wisdom is so important for the younger viewers that are listening, or people who are trying to get into, enhancing their financial position. The mindset that you had was, I'm going to use the leverage and the good debt to build my net worth.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of buying liabilities, like you mentioned, like a primary residence, the good thing about it, it's your shelter, it's where your home is. And honestly, the perspective is, I'm paying something that will eventually pay me a good amount back, but there's so many red tape before that even comes to fruition. It's a long plan before that really becomes an
Real
asset.
estate's a slow play.
It is. So when should somebody buy their first investment property? Is there a time where you would say, hey, like, you're ready, or no, you're not ready? Is there a timeline for you that you saw that maybe?
Make sure you buy your primary residence first.
Mm-hmm.
Why
is
that's
that?
always the best. You can put less money down. You're going to live in it. You need to, unless you're going to live with family forever for free.
Right.
I would say buy your own residence. You're going to get tax benefits from it. You're going to get some tax write-offs. And overall, you're going to establish more net worth out of it.
Gotcha. So
You
buy
should
the
keep a
primary
report,
residence.
and you should keep a report card. Your report card should be your net worth. Net worth is all your debts versus all your assets. Subtract the two. What do you get as your net bottom line?
Mm-hmm. I remember you mentioned Sheplack. He looks at it every morning.
Yeah, well, he looks at his bank account
Every morning.
Yeah.
So how often would you say someone should be paying attention to these things?
I'd say monthly. The more you look at it, the more you're focused on it. Focus, amazing what happens when you focus on something. Anything you focus on expands, right?
Right.
So if you're saying, hey, I want to lose weight, or I want to do this, once you focus on it, now all of a sudden it expands to what you only have so much brain bandwidth anyway, right? So it's like, what am I going to focus on? Where do I want to go after? What are my important things? And especially longer term. What's my 10-year plan? What's my 5-year plan? What's my 1-year plan? What's my 6 months? But look at longer down the road, because we grossly underestimate what we can do in 10 years, but way overestimate what we can do in 1 year.
That's
like,
so true.
we're going to hit all these goals, blah, 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 and then 8 months come in, you're like, shit, I'm not tracking my goals. So, but if you look at it for 10 years and you're like, holy crap, I knocked all these things off the list, that's rewarding too, and makes you want to put other big things on there, but it's what's important to you, not everybody else.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the one evaluation that everybody should have is almost like that internal inventory of like, okay, what are my actions doing? You know, am I spending a lot more than I should be? Because most people don't have a true budget. They may have
an Amazon, right? It's like, oh, I'm gonna get on here. Oh yeah, I need this, blah blah blah. And it's there tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's easier than ever to buy stuff. You can literally use your phone and show up somewhere and just ding, you know. So it's the consumerism has created this high debt. I mean, credit card debt's the worst it's been in all time high, you know. So a lot of people are going to be in tough positions. So let's redirect this to the person that, let's say now or in a few years, is going to have some financial struggles. Maybe they've had a bankruptcy or some things. Or how do you get out of that? How do you, because you went through a very tough time, borderline.
Yeah, thank God I didn't file bankruptcy, but I had to like settle some debts, get everything like. Thankfully, anybody, if I owed anything personally, I was able to take care of. But some credit cards, I had to settle with them.
Right.
Like they made their share, believe me.
Right.
But you know, then I was having to settle some of that stuff with them. It was like, but you have to, you have to dig out of your hole.
Right.
And I started working 80 and 90 and 100-hour weeks because I'm like, I need to get out of here as soon as possible. I need to feel better. I need my life to get better. I need to make my family feel better because it causes tension. Oh, like number one cause of divorce is money.
Right. That's crazy. You would think like affairs or anything like that.
It's always money.
Wow.
And people are not like, what's the most uncomfortable conversation?
That is true.
It's usually money.
It really shouldn't be though. I think people get so caught up in whether it be their ego or something to talk about
money's the root of all evils.
Right.
And I'm like, really not?
Right.
It's really not.
And
like what you do with it could be evil.
Well, you said money's a volumizer. So if you're an asshole, money's going to make you more of an asshole.
Exactly.
If you're a good person, you're going to be a giver. You're going to be someone who produces. And the compound effect, I love when it talked about from the retirement perspective at a young age. And one thing I really took out of that, it showed the graph of somebody that was 21 years old and invested in IRA. It was mainly focused on the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So the Roth IRA, for those who don't know, is almost like a 401k structured for mainly entrepreneurs.
And it's pre-tax going in, so when it comes out, it's already taxed.
Right. So what it showed, it was a graph. If you put, I think it was $300 every month. It's about $300 every month. And put that in the Roth IRA. And by the time you're 65, it had a couple million in there.
It was even stopped because it said, like, if you started like you're 21 or 23, you did it for 15 years, and then the person at say you stop by 40, now the person at 40 decides they're going to start theirs, and they're putting in 500 or 700. They still end up with less money than that 20.
I think I don't know the exact figures, so don't quote me on this, but I think the difference was it was like 800,000 to like 3 million or something crazy. And you see the power of leveraging from a financial perspective, just putting those 300, because the way I look at it is this: $300 is a couple of times going out. If I minimize it, whether it be budget correctly or maybe I stay in for a couple of times, that's all it takes.
But look, we were talking about coffee.
Yeah.
If you save $3 a day, because people go to coffee, I think my daughter, goes to Dunkin' Donuts all the time. I'm like,
oh yeah.
So you're probably spending $8 a day, right? So say if you saved five on 5 days during a week, a business day, that's $25. That's $100 in 4 weeks. So that's $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year. 5 years, that's $6,000. That's more than the average person have saved within 5 years.
That is insane. I always
drink. That's just coffee, nothing else.
I drink coffee. I'll be honest. I drink coffee. I don't like the taste of it. I do it just because I love the energy with it. But so many people, they have to go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts and get their frappe jacked up with sugar. So number one, it's not really that good for you at that point. And number two, you're paying $5. Starbucks, it was like $6 for this one coffee I bought the other. I'm like, who in the world?
And there's a line. Like you go to the I think when I go to the airport, there's always a line.
Oh yeah,
like a mile long. Like I don't get it. I don't drink coffee.
Right.
And I'm not wasting the money.
Right.
Like it doesn't make sense. I'll pay the $4 for a bottle of water though. Like unfortunately. But it's those small things. Everybody thinks it's not the why in the road. It's all the little things that compound. And that's what people need to really look at. So when they look at their budget, make sure they have the line items and sit down with your significant other. If you're an individual, young person, just do it on your own. If you're married, do it together. It's going to be a hard conversation. You guys are going to get pissed at each other. You're going to get aggravated. You're probably going to have to take a time out and go back to it.
Right.
But do it, because me and my wife had plenty of arguments over, no, this is what it is. And then we had a monthly budget. Here's your budget money for groceries, all the incidentals, any kids' birthday parties, blah, blah, blah. And I would give it to her in cash. I was like, there's your $1,000 for the month. If you go run out, we don't have any more.
Right.
And you have to live like that. That's, the government prints money.
Right.
You just can't go print money for yourself. You got to go make more of it.
Yeah, that's a good. I think your mindset on that is, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, is there. It's a deal breaker. Like, this is what it is, and so many people will have it for a few months. I know I've personally done it. I've had one of my first mistakes was
Nobody's
that I'll say,
perfect. We all do it.
I'm not going to spend more than this amount. Like, let's say $1,000. And if I look at it and go, oh, I'm at like 1,000, and I almost fall into the trap of saying I could go a little bit over. It's not going to change a lot. And then if you like rewind and then you look at your bank statement for, let's say, a 6-month time period, and then you realize, like, damn, like, I could have saved so much more money doing it that way. And I didn't have that deal breaker mindset.
Well, the other thing is, as you see your bank balance saving and your numbers are going up, you're like, you feel more relieved. Like, less stress, less aggravation, less, oh my God, I got to do it. Like, oh, you feel like because when you're living that paycheck to paycheck, and I lived it. Like,
Right.
I'm not speaking to other people going, oh, this is how it is. I lived it. I know what it was like, because at the end of the month, there was more month than money.
Right.
So I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do in these cases? And then you put someone on a credit card, or you do bank balance transfers and all this, or credit card transfers. And I'm like, you play the games and you end up digging this big hole, and then you owe 110 grand. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Personal responsibility, though, how do you get out of it? You've got to create a plan, and it all starts with budgeting. And then, all right, what do I have to do to make, all right, I was still short by X amount of dollars. How am I going to go make more money? All right, I got to get a part-time job, or I got to go sell more houses, or I got to go do whatever. Commissions is a great thing, and there's no ceiling to it. If you focus on it, it expands.
Yep.
No matter what the market is. I think of back 2008, 9, 10 when the market sucked. I was still selling more houses each year. I was pretty damn driven, but I was growing my team. More money was going out because I had staff, so I had to make sure that they were paid first before I even paid myself. So how are you doing these things? But it all comes back to focus. But put it on a spreadsheet. Write it, like, when you start writing, and when you write with a pen or paper, like pen or pencil.
So not typing.
It ingrains. Yeah, not typing it. It ingrains in your head. I forgot I don't remember the statistic on it, but it embeds into your brain like 30 times greater than just typing something in. So when you're physically writing it out and then you go back to it later, you're like, all right, oh yeah, I forgot this. Let me add that in. No, this is the total. Get a calculator out if you're not good with math. Total it up, figure out, and then look at what your look what goes into your bank account every month.
Right.
Like,
I think so
or
many
every 2
people
weeks.
that budget, they do it through their computer. They don't write it down.
Yes.
It's kind of tucked away. It's not in front of them. So I love that, because I feel like as if I always put stuff that is important to me in front of my face. Like, I have stuff on my mirror.
If you're a young person, do it with your parent. Like, get your parents involved. They're going to be happy you did, and you're probably going to help them some.
Yeah.
Because most people don't live on a budget. I'd say 90-some% don't.
Right.
So if you did that, and imagine how that would help your parents. If you're a 20-some-year-old trying to say, hey, I need to figure this budget out, you think you'd help me? They're going to learn. They're not going to say, oh, no, I'm not going to do it. Some may, but eventually they're going to give in, and they want to help you. So you're going to look at it.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's something that I did, and I did it with you. We sat down.
The other thing, I just think of daughter. So she got a promotion. She was making more money. She's like, all right, I'm going to go buy that new Bronco now. I'm like, no, you're not doing it. You just bought the Bronco Sport. No, you're not going to go do that. That's so many people do it. I'm like, stop.
My
And her
age,
husband's
oh
in
my
the
gosh,
background, yeah.
I think it's comical. I don't mean to make fun of people, but
Yeah.
the amount of people that will go, I just bought my new car. They have no assets in their name. They they buy the luxuries, and it's just part of it is they don't understand. The school system has failed us. It's failed me. It's failed a lot of the kids in the younger generations, and even yours.
Yeah, do you know how to write a check?
Yeah, well, yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
but those simple things of that, like balancing a checkbook, because they don't have to do it because it's all done online for them now. It's like, all right, Did you add up all your expenses? Are they right? First of all, did you double check? Do you know how to make change? If I gave you $100 and it was $42.70, do you know how to give me change?
Yeah.
Like, math is so important for people to understand, but it's these small things that will help you tremendously. It's so frustrating because, again, they think it's this big, huge thing. I'm like, no, it's just this plus this plus this plus.
Yep.
All these little things will add up to a huge difference in your life.
Yeah.
And you're not going to see it. You start today. You're not seeing it tomorrow. You're not seeing it next month, but you will see it in a year, 2 years, 3 years. And you're like, holy shit, now I saved $5,000. I saved $10,000. Whatever the number is, it's amazing how maybe I saved $50,000, but depending on what you're saving, because if you lived on that less, and all of a sudden you're working and you're making more, you're earning more commissions, you work another part-time job and you're saving all that and just putting it aside, putting it in a bank account that you don't look at hardly ever. You're checking to make sure nobody stole it, but that's about all you're checking.
Get a high yield savings account for the younger ones.
Yeah.
I mean, people are making, like, I'm making
Or CDs.
close. Yes, I'm making like 6% in a savings, and if I kept it in my normal checking savings, I was making like 0.01. But because the yield spread's so big, they're going to give more money to a lot of these savings because they obviously want to loan more money. But I would say if you have like a Capital One 360 has an account, if you go online, you could pull it up. Marcus Goldman Sachs has one. That's why I do it through. And, they gave 5.4% on a year yield, which is a fantastic return for a savings account, and it's liquid.
Yeah.
So I would say anybody that's looking to
Price
save.
got there's another one I was just thinking of. I have a friend that we were talking about it, and he's getting 5.5 to 6%.
Yeah.
And sometimes you put big numbers in here, like, holy shit, now I'm getting $8,000 a month. I'm getting $5,000 a month.
Yeah, the one I have, there's no minimum. It's FDI insured up to $250,000. So I think it's a good route to go. So we covered
That's
a lot
good thing
of
with inflation, at least.
Yes, at least
That's
the yield.
The best part that's come out of it.
So we talked a lot. We went through a bunch of routes. So a lot of the viewers here, they've got number one, you're the entry level coming out of college. You have debt. Number one, save $1,000 out the gate. Once you get to $1,000, we go 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Maybe you could do even more. Hopefully that's the
minimum.
goal. And then once you start to implement expenses, minimize that, like you mentioned, as much as possible.
Have a budget, though. Just the budget is such a key.
Right.
You just got to figure out what your outgoing expense is, and then also figure out what your after-tax income is. Not, I make this much in a year.
Not your gross. Your
Right.
net.
That's your gross. What are you netting that's getting put in your bank? If you get paid every 2 weeks, how much is it that's going in there?
Right.
If you're on commission, what is it that you're putting in on a monthly basis that you're going to have to average on a quarterly basis or something? But think of those. But the budget is so freaking important. Not what you guys want to hear, but this is what's going to help you.
It's not the sexy stuff, is what everybody says.
It's all the small basic stuff.
So you write down the budget, you know what your expenses are, minimize that. And that includes before you get a house. Once you get a house, still have that mentality, find ways to house hack and leverage that now liability so it eventually becomes an asset.
So when you get a bonus,
Here we go.
bonus and savings.
Boom.
Don't, hey, what am I buying? That's what everybody's
Go on
first thought is.
vacation.
I'm going to buy this. I'm going to go here. I'm like, that costs a lot more than that, first of all. And then put it aside. It's like if you pretend like you didn't make it,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden you need it for 5 months down the road, amazing how you're going to feel so much better rather than you just went and bought something and you're like, oh, that was nice.
And what that tells me is ignore the impulse, because I get the impulse. I get the itch sometimes when I know I got
Some
cash
itches
laying
are bigger than others.
Yeah.
I have friends that were like, I'm going to go buy this $1.2 million house.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't. And he's thankful that he didn't do it. But it's been 6 months.
Yep.
I'm like so thankful that he didn't.
Yep.
But or don't buy all this, like the accumulation of all the stupid shit that people buy on Amazon that they didn't need.
Yep. Stay off Amazon. Stop clicking on shit.
Right, because it shows up at home and you're like, oh, what did I even order?
Yeah.
You don't remember because you were in the moment that, I need this. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden, if you don't, look at how it starts accumulating in savings. And then all of a sudden, now you have the funds. Hey, now I want to go buy this house, or I want to go. This was really important. I mean, this has been one of my goals. I'm going to do this in X amount of time.
Yep.
Now you can take care of that.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're never going to have the money. You're never going to get out of the paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
You can't be entrepreneurial because you don't have the extra funds to give you time to think. Automatically, when you have all those extra funds, now you have mindset and wisdom to say, all right, what is it that's most important to me?
Right.
Where am I going? What's going to drive me to the next thing? And then all of a sudden you have this big, like, wham, you make X amount of dollars from it. Now you have something if you need to go buy it. Like, all right, now I'm going to do this. Great. That was a great reward.
Yes.
Or make your small, like mine when I used to hit my goals would be I'd get a massage.
Yep.
Get a massage, $100.
Right.
Now they're more, but
it's still not. It's not extravagant. Like you're not blowing it on a
yeah. I try to do it like less
car.
than $100
right.
like a month.
So you should treat yourself. You want to live a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think the priority needs to be minimizing your expenses. Build a blanket where you can now leverage your money to put better opportunities ahead. So now it compounds like we talk about. Those little small savings plans now lead to the investment plans. Those investment plans allow you to make good decisions. Sure. If you screw up by any chance, like you mentioned, your focus needs to be minimizing everything that has caused the cloudiness in your life. So that's the debt, that's the credit issues. Focus on those, dominate out, and then get out of that position just like you did. And then once you get in a position where you're investing your money, that's where the rewards start to come. Yeah. So then let's finish on this. When is the exit? How do you figure out if you're ready to retire or not?
Good question. I would say it's a moving target. And, I told you I was listening to the podcast this morning, and they said the oldest person's 122. I was like, damn,
that's crazy.
But, think my dad died at 84. I was like thinking I'd be ecstatic to live to 84. But then I'm like, why can't I live to 100? Mm-hmm. But I want to make sure I have enough funds to live to 100. Plus, what are you going to do? You need to have purpose. And if you're not going to have purpose, why would you stop working?
Yeah.
Usually work gives you like, all right, I like to play golf, but I can't play golf every day. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get bored of that too.
Yeah.
So you need to have the purpose of what's going to drive you. Like, do you like helping others? If you like helping others, can you make money at helping others? Most cases, 99, you become more valuable. The more valuable you are at helping more people, that's when you earn even more money. That's what we were talking about, W-2 employees and stuff. It's like, do all the little things and don't expect anything back.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, when you do that enough times, it compounds and they're like, holy crap, did you see so-and-so is doing? Oh my God, they're amazing. And then all of a sudden they're climbing the ladder at work. Or they go
that's
start their own
leverage.
Business.
That's leverage in itself too. That's a different type.
But that comes back to the mindset, right? It all starts with the mindset of budgeting, small things. Don't expect a result of a benefit back to you, and then all of a sudden you have this huge outcome.
Absolutely. So really, if you're looking to retire, like find ways to, number one, keep yourself productive, but I feel as if it depends on your lifestyle and everything.
Yeah, some people, like, you sell a business and you're 55 years old and you're done. Great. You're probably going to go back to doing something within a couple of years because you may retire for a little while. Like, hey, I want to play golf and tennis, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to travel the world. Great. At some point, you're probably going to go back to doing something. You get to pick because now you have the reserves.
Yep.
When you have the reserves, now you have more options.
So
you don't feel the pressure of it.
Yeah. So really, it just depends on your lifestyle.
Yeah. And real estate gives you have mailbox money. Yeah, stuff's going to break. You have to fix it. But you usually have enough mailbox money if you own enough properties that, hey, I don't have the pressure that I have to go to work every day. That's my monthly nut and then some, my travel expenses, And do I want to retire now or not? If I did, what would I do?
Right.
I need purpose. I'm going to work.
Right.
Because I enjoy it.
Right.
You get some people that are wound tighter. I have a hard time just sitting on the beach. I'm going to maybe walk and pace and all the other stuff. And you get other ones like, hey, I'm at 40, I'm going to retire. Fabulous.
Yep.
That's what you want to do. It's not for me.
As long as you have money that's going to fund the lifestyle that you're going to enjoy.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody. Lee, I mean, again, you've been a great mentor in a lot of ways, and one of those has been the financial piece, that you've given me to help me grow my finances. And I listen to pretty much everything you say. I'm not perfect at it. Don't get me wrong.
Well, we talked last week after our last one. And it's like, all right, we all listen to ourselves. Like, I have to hear the same message.
Yeah.
It's reminders. It's not always that we need to hear something new. We just need to hear it again.
Yep.
And sometimes again and again and again.
Right.
Because otherwise, that's the only way you get through it.
Absolutely.
And you got to tell yourself a lot of stories.
In the mix of it, because you want the nice watch, those nice things. You're like, no, I want it. But yeah, when it really comes down to is creating a financial plan for yourself, and it all starts with the focus on that. And that's what he did, and he's a great representation of what that means. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. Tune into the next one. You should have brought your notepad out for that one. So there's a lot of information, but take it and use it out in the world. We hope we brought enough value for you.
And share this, share it to others.
Yeah, share the show.